Some people seem to have it all. Great family, great legacy, great wealth. If you out here struggling on a day-to-day basis, maybe seeing these presentations on your timeline bring you down. And maybe you'll never admit it, but ultimately you're human. And at points we can all momentarily succumb to envy. But the theme of today's video might help you out with that. Because the fact of life is, everything costs something.
We were in a suite with his friends and our family.
I think Drew Brees got hurt on that play, going for that fumble.
Oh, that arm gets hyperextended in a very scary position.
I thought to myself, you know, this is probably the last time that I ever put on a Charger uniform. And then reality really sinks in. I say, this might be the last time I ever put on a football uniform.
Well, I happened to be watching the game. He was diving for a ball down on his goal line. Then some lineman fell across his body and made his arm go away over his head, and he walked out with his right shoulder caught. And as he came off the sidelines. And having been there and watching that in slow motion and watching him walk off, I knew that he had knocked his humeral head out the socket inferiorly, which is down to the bottom, which is real unusual. It's called a subluxation erecti, and it was locked there out the bottom of the socket. And he had a 360-degree labral tear all the way around his shoulder, particularly involving the bottom of his shoulder where the labrum attaches to the socket. And the thing that we were a little bit surprised with was that he had a complete tear of the undersurface of his supraspinatus and infraspinatus, his rotator cuff. Had to repair all of that.
I mean, if you could rank the worst injuries that you could have as a quarterback, I mean, that's right up there.
You know, he went down, and I just knew that was it. We were gone.
Guys, that's what it's all about. Drew Brees with his son. And thank God he's got earphones on right now because we can barely hear each other. But you know what? Don't you live for that moment right there?
Everything costs something. Everything costs something.
I'll let you know a little fact. I don't throw with my right arm anymore. My right arm does not work. So when I throw in the backyard right now, I throw left-handed. I can play pickleball just because it's below the waist, you know. But anything above my shoulders, I've got a hard time with. And it's probably a result of it's definitely a result of the injury that I suffered when I left San Diego, the dislocated right shoulder and all that stuff that I thought I may never play again. So that kind of put me on the fast track to a degenerative shoulder and all kinds of arthritic changes and stuff like that. So no, I don't throw with my right arm anymore.
Basically what you're saying is the medicals were right. It just took longer to develop than they realized?
Yeah, I mean the medicals were right in regards to the long-term prognosis. Hey, this is a significant injury, and now you're on this fast track to early onset arthritis and degenerative shoulder and all that stuff, right? Like at some point I'm going to need a shoulder replacement. But I'm trying to kind of fight that as long as I can. But in the short term, man, there's things we can do to get this thing operational again, right? And that's basically what I did was after that surgery, and it just became a constant battle of, maintaining strength and stability. And I used to call it prehab. I just kind of had all these exercises that I would have to do in order to keep my shoulder strong. But at some point, father time kicks in, and you kind of fight that towards the end of your career.
So what happens when them NFL cliches that you thought you left behind hawk you down post-retirement? Well, pain is temporary, but the results can be permanent. Leave it all out on the field. But what do I take home with me? Today, we're talking a little bit about Drew Brees and the things NFL players sacrifice for legacy. Glory, fame, money, the game, or maybe just bubbling ambition. And don't you dare judge, because those are most likely the same exact reasons you do whatever you do. Today we're discussing Drew Brees and the things NFL players sacrifice for legacy. Cool? Cue the Wang.
Yeah, you'll never know quitter, 'cause I'ma go get her.
Alright man, real quick before we jump back in, today's video is sponsored by DraftKings. The weather's getting colder, but the season's heating up. And I partner with DraftKings to help you stay on your sports betting hot streak. Right now, any new customers who bet just $5 will get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Now, if you like me and you've been downloaded the DraftKings app, you can still get in on what they call a no sweat bet. So with that, even if your same game parlay doesn't hit, there's no sweat because you'll get what you bet back via bonus bets. If sports betting is still not available in your state, you can still join in on the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy. There you can still use your football knowledge to earn some cash prizes. Great way to get your feet wet. That's how I started. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up using my promo code FlemLo. Remember, DraftKings is an official partner of the NFL, so thanks to them again for sponsoring today's video. The other day I asked y'all, which retired quarterback deserves more respect for their NFL career? We got some dope answers. F&J said Randall Cunningham is a borderline Hall of Fame quarterback and was electric at the position in an era where you didn't really see that from QBs. Those are facts, not to mention, after an injury in '91, he lost most of his athleticism that made him so dynamic in the first place, you know? So he changed his whole style, bro, out of necessity. And years later, at the tender age of 35 years old, dude put together another first team All-Pro season. But every time he got going, injuries would steal away his momentum. He's actually coaching track and field at UNLV now. 864 Pescador added Jake Delhomme. Underrated career as a whole and was one bad kickoff away from winning the ring. He didn't win that game, but he did leave his mark. He still has the record for longest touchdown pass in Super Bowl history. Then you got Lil Mexican 3306, who didn't realize his comment was the subject of this video. He said Drew Brees definitely deserves more respect, especially after revealing that he can't throw with his right arm anymore. He really gave his all for the team and the city. He literally left his right arm out there on the field.
You know, father time kicks in, you know, and you kind of fight that towards the end of your career.
There's a lot of ways to describe the process of getting older. You're a hell of a lot more likely to get injured in your sleep, but on the bright side, you're less likely to care what people think about it. It's like your bones are more brittle, but your skin is much thicker. I like to describe getting old like this. It's like slowly twisting the zoom on a powerful camera lens. As you get older, some people zoom in so close that they lose all perspective and get completely fixated on how things used to be. Or your perspective can broaden as you learn new information and mix that with the old info you had for all these years. Once you do that, you realize you can see a lot more. It's like a world of possibilities just open up to you. But look, all that information can be overwhelming. At first, it can be so heavy it might get you down a bit. But once you learn how to process that new information and make peace with it, you now have a new superpower. When you start watching pro sports, and I mean really watching, understanding what's going on, you completely learn the game from the standpoint of whatever era you come in on. You live every moment like it's never happened before and will never happen again. It really feels like that until the next era just comes and does it bigger. Next thing you know, they calling your favorite players plumbers and electricians. I know the way things feel during a particular era can sometimes feel different once you get some distance from it. During the height of Drew Brees' career, it felt like he reached a level where he would stand on the same plane as the greats of his time. Peyton, Brady, Rodgers, and Brees. For years, 6-foot Drew Brees stood eye to eye with these giants. Today, you still hear a lot from and about Peyton, Brady, and Aaron Rodgers. But Brees is kind of treated like he was a tier below. But maybe that's just because we didn't know the full story. Here's the part of the story you know. After an okay start to his career, Drew Brees finished his rookie contract with no real new offer from the Chargers, who took him second round of the 01 draft. Since in the 04 draft, they took Phillip Rivers in the first round. They offered Drew a fluffed up contract with like $5 million guaranteed. They were ready to throw him away, and he was just 25. Keep in mind, this is before the shoulder injury. So where's the shoulder injury come in? Okay, this is that point in the story. To give Rivers another year to make sure that he was ready, the Chargers signed Drew back on a non-exclusive tag, and nobody in the league was trying to part with 2 first-round picks for a 6-foot, 200-pound second-round quarterback. Drew ended up starting that year and threw for 3,500 yards, which at the time was the most he'd thrown in his career. And it's crazy because after the last game of that season, there was a real chance that dude would be forced to retire. never having a single 4,000-yard season. And if you know anything about Drew Brees' career, the thought of him with no 4,000-yard seasons is crazy.
And that ball is going to be headed to Canton, Ohio.
Dr. James Andrews is a renowned orthopedic surgeon who's repaired hella ligaments for a bunch of your favorite athletes. Bo Jackson, Michael Jordan, Adrian Peterson, Roger Clemens, more recently Chase Young and Marcus Lattimore. He's even got some pro wrestling credits on his resume, and he's done surgery on 2 baseball players with the same name. They also have the same hair color, they're the same height, played the same position, and he did the same surgery on them both. They actually took a DNA test to find out they wasn't related. One of them probably living in the wrong dimension or something. Moving on. Anyway, Dr. Andrews performed Drew Brees' surgery, and he felt so good about how it turned out. He said, if I did that surgery 100 times, I couldn't do it better than the one I just did. So in his mind, he killed it. And given the doc's reputation, Drew Brees, as you'd expect, felt a lot of relief from that. But as great of a reputation as Dr. Andrews has had, recently his track record is a little more spotty, as a couple of his clients are actually suing for unexpected long-term damage following the surgery. Now, Drew Brees was told he'd have some long-term issues, but I don't know if he was expecting it to be this bad. But Drew Brees says he was warned about the issues that would come. He understood the sacrifice and laid on the table willingly. And today he's really dealing with those long-term effects. Random question, bro. If you had a chance to front load your life's contract, but on the back end slowly lose whatever tool got you there in the first place, would you sign it like being one of the greatest singers ever, but on the back end you won't even be able to speak by age 50? You ain't gotta answer that. This is just the type of stuff I ask myself to kind of help me to get into the mindset of these players. Because when you put it into terms of what it really means for your life, some people would still do it and some people would not. I personally don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but them type of questions get you in the right frame of mind for these videos. And once you carry that forward, next thing you know, you start formulating theories that you don't even want to formulate. Real quick, here's a theory that I'm not going to run too far with, but I can't talk about this and not go into a little more detail here. So Dr. Andrews became known back in 1985 after operating on pitcher Roger Clemens. He's been renowned since then. Dude had a flawless record until recently in 2018. Over the last 5 years, 2 different NFL players have filed medical malpractice lawsuits against the doc. Both Sharif Floyd and Taylor Lewan cite long-term severe muscle and nerve damage, thanks to quote negligent acts and omissions. Okay. The fact that Brees is also dealing with severe permanent damage after surgery from the same doctor is something I have to mention, but I don't want to take that too far since Drew was warned of permanent damage, which seemed to be due to the injury, not to the surgery. But honestly though, bro, how would you really know? But for now, let's chill on that unless more info comes out later. The type of speculation going unchecked can be dangerous. As far as the recent lawsuits though, I will say this. At 81, it might be time to hang up the retractors. But anyway, according to Drew, long-term damage was inevitable. Regardless the consequences, this is exactly what he wanted. Due to that, I don't think he want anybody to feel sorry for him. So let's reframe it and focus more on the conscious decision he made.
The medicals were right in regards to the long-term prognosis. Hey, this is a significant injury, and now you're on this fast track to early onset arthritis and degenerative shoulder and all that stuff.
Now, the interview itself is some little circumstantial proof of what I was saying at the beginning of the video. Some people probably disagree with it because they hold Drew in that regard with those other quarterbacks from his era. I do as well, but I'm talking the general public. I don't think Drew quite gets that billing. And the circumstantial evidence that will kind of help my point a little bit is the actual interview from which we got this information. It wasn't on a major sports podcast or a major ESPN show. It was on a radio only show on a day where they had a guest host. Couldn't even get the normal host in to interview my boy Drew. And I know scheduling and stuff like that, I'm just saying it seems wild. And unfortunately, he doesn't ask Drew whether constantly throwing on that shoulder over the years, taking hits on that shoulder, falling on that shoulder. If all those things would speed up and exacerbate the effect, I don't see how they wouldn't, but I would have liked to hear it verbatim. I'm gonna assume they did, and I'm gonna assume that Drew knew that. The details will probably get ironed out on all of the podcasts that's gonna bring him on now. The most fascinating thing about the whole story is the fact that the greatest portion of his career came on borrowed time. Like literally when he started his Hall of Fame bid, the writing was literally already on the wall. It's like the timer was set and my dude was on the clock. You know, pressure bust pipes or it make diamonds. He hung with and often beat the greatest of his era, and some don't, but I consider him to be in that class. And he accomplished all the greatest feats of his career after his career should have already been over. Pre-injury, he made 1 Pro Bowl. Then post-injury, he made 12 Pro Bowls. Pre-injury, he never had a 4,000-yard season. Bro, post-injury, he did it 12 times. He also threw for 5,000 yards 4 times post-injury and fell just short 2 more times. He led the league in passing yards 7 different times over a 10-year stretch. He was the completion percentage leader 6 different times and led in passing touchdowns 4 different times. He won Offensive Player of the Year twice, led in passer rating twice, and won a damn Super Bowl. And there he stood at the top of the mountain. But the climb was crazier than any of us ever knew. The whole time he knew he had to climb all the way back down with 1 arm. During those final years of his career, bro, with each passing game, you could see his arm wearing down with every single throw. Early in them seasons, he might hit a couple seam routes, but by November, it was slants, hitches, and checkdowns. Some people thought he got way too conservative in his older age, when the truth was, bro, he physically couldn't throw it 20 yards. Some of the seasons he put together with that crazy limitation need to be studied, and Sean Payton deserves a lot of credit as well. With the shoulder, Drew knew he didn't have much longer to play, so he approached every year with an intense sense of urgency. As he aged, that urgency got stronger and stronger, until he was basically game to game on whether his career would continue. In 2018, bro, a sponsor sent me and KTO out to watch what should have been one of Drew's last games, the 2018 NFC Championship game, when the New Orleans Saints faced off against the Rams. There I witnessed in person one of the worst missed calls I'd ever seen in the history of the playoffs. Saints fans were so mad, bro, the towels from the roof was falling down. It was crazy to witness, and I didn't fully even get it till years later. The most obvious and blatant pass interference call anybody will ever see is occurring in this picture. This was obvious in person, and later when I saw it everywhere online, I realized it was obvious to everybody. It was so bad that the next year the NFL changed the rules to allow coaches to challenge pass interference calls. The refs then colluded and didn't change a single call for the entirety of that season, because how dare you question their performance? But that's another story, man. But this blown call stopped Breeze from making a second appearance in the Super Bowl and potentially taking a Hall of Fame career to even greater heights. If he'd gotten that chance, bro, win or lose, I believe it's very likely that he walks away then. And if he wins, going out with his second Super Bowl gives him yet another major boost in the legacy points. Not to mention would have had a huge impact on how he's been remembered. Instead of remembering them last 3 years where he struggled to throw the ball, them last 2 years is probably erased and you remember him as a champion. But given the fact that he knew that shoulder was done, it really magnifies that loss to a whole nother level. To lose a game that ends your season 1 game from the Super Bowl due to a terrible missed call when you leveraged your future to get here, that's about as terrible as any loss can get. And he's still remembered as great, but you know there's levels to this. In 2018, the Saints was good. They was pushing cap space down the line, and Drew pushed all of his physical chips into the middle of the table. But he got cheated by the dealer and pulled some change out his pocket and desperately tried to buy back into the game. And he played 2 more hands, or played 2 more years. He lost 1 year in the wild card, and then the next season, he went out with a not so great 134 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 picks in the divisional round of the playoffs. Going out like that wasn't great, and to make matters worse, he went out like that against Tom Brady, who then went on, bro, to beat Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes on the way to his 7th Super Bowl. He takes out another leader of that era and then beats the leader of the new school, and then Drew's forced to walk away unceremoniously. Despite all of that, Drew put together a Hall of Fame career, and the one Super Bowl he did win had added significance. He's a New Orleans Saints legend who's inspired not only fans, but he's even inspired current NFL quarterbacks as well.
And Drew is a little bit offbeat, but Joe Burrow says he grew up idolizing. Have you met him, spoken to him, anything like that?
No, that's the first I heard that. That's cool. I like he wears number 9.
Drew Brees' right arm threw for 80,000 yards, the second most passing yards in NFL history. But today, despite the fact that he's only 44, he can't even play catch in the backyard with his sons. Drew Brees' career says that he's one of the greatest ever. For whatever reason, he don't really get that top billing. But the fact that he built that career on a shoulder that was a ticking time bomb will maybe add a little extra New Orleans spice to his resume.
You have any idea what that's like? Having someone lose a limb to save your life?
Actually, I kind of do.